All right, so today we have Pastor, Prophet, Bishop Nathan Cline from Revo Church here in Winston-Salem. And Keith, you're kind of a church planting resident-ish, something?
Basically just learning.
Just learning. Nice. Sitting at the feet of Gamaliel or something.
No.
He's with Wes, so.
Oh. Oh.
I'm
jealous.
Well, we are talking about recruiting and kind of enlisting a launch team, getting a team ready to plant with you, even how to recruit, that sort of thing. And so I remember when I heard of some guy named Nathan coming to Winston from somewhere else. I didn't even know where they were coming from, and he was bringing like 20-something people. And they were going to plant a church downtown. I'm like, oh, okay, that sounds interesting. I was very unfamiliar with the realm of church planting. And so a bunch of people moving to Winston and getting jobs from somewhere else, like, that's kind of odd. I just didn't get it. And then saw what they did and why they did. And we were part of their church, my wife and I, for about a year and a half. And so love this guy, love what they're doing in our city. They've got 2 campuses now. The North Campus is led by Wes, who's a student here at Piedmont. And he'll probably pop into a class at some point throughout the semester, and then Nathan's going to join us for at least 3 more classes, I think. So he's going to be here a few more times for us, and I think one's going to be a recorded video, and then the other 2 I think it would be live in class. So thankful to have Pastor Nathan, and as you see here on the screen, we have the few questions that that I sent him to kind of discuss through, and I think you wrote them on the board so Derek can see them for those of us here. So Nathan, kind of take it away. You've got the questions. I'm going to give you the time, and then we end at 9:15, so we'll have much at the end you want to say for Q&A, that sort of thing. You just I'll just cut you off at like 9:16 if I have to. So,
okay.
All right, thanks, man.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so the questions are on the board and on the screen, but if you have any more, I want to know, just interrupt or pipe in or whatever. But about 5 years ago, I graduated seminary. I was living in New Orleans, and I knew that God was calling me to plant a church, so I bartered with God. I wouldn't suggest you doing that, but it ended up working for me. I said, God, I'll plant a church, but I don't want to do it alone. I need a team. I was involved in a church plant on a leadership team there in New Orleans, and I'm not taking anything away from the Holy Spirit, but I thought that one of the big reasons why that church plant was so successful was that God had brought together a team of guys, not just one guy, to focus on different aspects of ministry, so one guy wasn't carrying the burden of the whole church. And so everybody had their area of ministry to focus on. Everybody was good at that. And I said, man, if I want to plant a church, I want that. I want to have a team of guys. And like church planting, discipleship, ministry, even life is not a Lone Ranger sport. We were created to live in community together. We are better together. All the little nuances that you guys are familiar with. And church planting is no different. If you think you're going to go out and plant a church by yourself, you're going to be sad.
Yeah.
It's going to be tough for you. So I knew that God had called me to plant a church, but also realized something that I wasn't ready. And please hear me out on that. Just because you're called doesn't mean you're ready. There are so many things that guys and girls that are called into the ministry, whether it's missions or pastor or worship leader or church planter, and they'll come up to me and say, well, listen, I'm called. Well, good. I'm glad. That's awesome. Now, what are you going to do to get ready for that so that you don't fail miserably? And so part of building a team is a part of you getting ready. When my wife and I graduated seminary, we decided that building a team was so important. We moved back to South Carolina, where I was from, and we spent 15 months in South Carolina networking, having conversations with people, casting the vision, getting this ready. And that was a really hard time for me because I knew God had called me to plant a church. But I wanted to go. I was ready. Let's launch it tomorrow. God's put it on my heart. Let's do it. And so it took discipline to say, all right, I'm going to invest my life in this city. I was in Anderson in the upstate of South Carolina, and I wanted to build a really solid team to help us plant a Revo church.
Recording started.
Guys, I would not be where I'm at today without a good team. A leader is only as good as the people that he has around him. I'm a big believer in that. And so if you want to set yourself up for success as a minister, whatever area of ministry you're going into, I would definitely say focus on the team, building that team first and laying that good foundation. One of the questions that Dustin sent was, did you know exactly what city you'd be planting in when you were recruiting the team? I didn't even know what state we would be in when we were recruiting the team. We were in South Carolina, and I knew that we'd probably want to stay around the South, being that's where I'm from, and most familiar with that area. But I was casting this vision to these people of planting a church, but I couldn't even tell them where the church was. And what I realized later is there are a lot of bad reasons that people will join your team. A couple of the bad reasons that people join your team is they're following a person. If they like you, or if they like somebody else on your team and they join the team, sometimes they'll say, oh, well, I joined the team because Dustin's on the team and I really like Dustin. Well, here's the problem with that. When Dustin leaves, they're not going to like it anymore. A lot of people will join your team because they want to have a position. I'm joining your team because I want to be the youth minister, or I want to be your right-hand man, or I'm going to be your next campus pastor, or sometimes they're promised a position in our church. Well, here's the problem. You may promise somebody a position and then realize a year from now you've got somebody that's a lot better than they are, and you want to give them that position. Or you realize the person that joins your team when they were 10 people can lead your team when they were 10, 20, or 30, but their leadership capacity runs out when you hit 60, 70, 80, 90. But if you've promised them this position, they come on board. If you say, hey, man, I want to put you somewhere else, they're going to leave because they joined your team to be the youth minister or whatever. Some people will join your team because they're interested in a particular program, a way of doing ministry, like I want to do ministry this way, this is my style, and as long as you do this style, then I'll join your team. Problem is, if you get planted and you realize that style isn't any good, then they're going to leave your team. And so a lot of bad reasons. The only real solid reason to have them on the team is that they're down with the vision that God has given you. Because the vision is never going to change. Hopefully you're not going to sway any on the vision that God has given you. That'll be the thing. The vision is the thing that you're constantly talking about, constantly elevating, constantly celebrating and putting in front of people. So if they're on for the vision, then they're going to be hooked on that for the life of your church. No matter who comes and goes, no matter if you move from city to city or you start metropolitan but then move to rural, whatever it is, like if they're down with the vision, then they're always going to stay. And so I didn't even tell them Winston-Salem. I just said, hey, guys, we want to plant a church that reaches people that don't know Him. We want to be a spark, a catalyst for spiritual growth in the city. And so when I sold them on that idea, I could tell them any city. And as long as that issue was there, lostness, then they were going to be game for it. And that's what happened, man. We came up to them and said we've narrowed it down to 2 or 3 cities. Greenville, North Carolina. We were looking at Asheville, and we were looking at Winston-Salem. And so we visited all 3 of it, fell in love with Winston-Salem, and we just came to this team of 28 people that we gathered together over these 15 months. And we said, hey, we're going to Winston. And nobody even knew where Winston was. We had to look it up on a map. And but because they were down with the vision, they were like, okay, that's just a name. That's just a word to us. We're in this to win people to Christ. And so it can help if you know your city, but it's not necessary. Start casting that vision of what God has called you to do. And then if they get hooked on the vision, they'll follow you anywhere. They'll follow that vision anywhere as well. Another question was, what did you communicate to people to impassion them to join you? We were big on communicating the need that there was. I wanted to have a conversation with somebody, whether it was building a team or raising funds, and I wanted that person at the end of the conversation today to say, we have to do something about this. Like that can't happen. It's not going to happen under my watch. There's no way that I can turn a blind eye to what you just said. And I did that through communicating a need. Did a lot of demographic research around this area. There's 12.2% of the people in this area between the age of 18 and 35, so that's all of us. Only 12.2% attend a church, and that's attend a church. That doesn't mean Christians. And so you got to believe that not a percentage of the people that actually attend a local church, a smaller portion of that is actually a follower of Jesus. So we're talking about 90% of the people that live in this area that are our age, our friends, don't go to church. Dude, that's a huge need, man. There's 27,000 college students in Winston-Salem in the 5 major universities. 12.2% of those go to church. So you've got this huge population density in this area that don't know Jesus. They're not involved in a local church. They're not growing spiritually. I wanted to communicate to our team an opportunity. This is not a burden. I'm not poor-mouthing them. I'm not doing Jesus a favor. I want to give you an opportunity to invest your life in something that's really going to matter. I want to give you the chance to be a part of something that is going to change somebody's life forever. I didn't beg people. I don't need you. I'm giving you an opportunity. And I want to pose it in such a way that you would be crazy not to grab a hold of this opportunity. Like I would walk away. I'll tell you how deep I was into it. When I would sit down with people and cast a vision for our team, I would literally walk away confused if they said no. Like if they said, I don't want to come with you, I'd say, wait, what? Let me tell you this again, because obviously you didn't hear the need. Obviously you don't know how great of an opportunity this is. It's almost like handing somebody $1,000 and them saying, no, I don't want it. And you're like, no, this is $1,000. You want this? This is good. You want to be a part of this? Like, what do you mean you don't want it? And like, I was so like God had birthed that vision in me, and I was so just enthralled with it. I would get frustrated and perplexed when people would say no to it. Mm-hmm. And so I want to communicate that the need is number one. The opportunity to be a part of something is another thing. And then ultimately, again, what's going to sell them is the vision. We wanted to see life change through Jesus. Guys, there's a huge need here. We can come over here and see God do something incredible. We can be used by Him. We're talking about life change here. Do you want to invest your life in that? Do you want to be a part of that? Our team is moving down here to reach people that are far from God. Who doesn't want to be a part of that? Why wouldn't you want to sell your house and quit your job and move to the other side of the country to be a part of that? And so I just tried to communicate those things, not focusing on the negative, not saying, well, it's going to be really hard and I'm going to need some help, or man, you're probably not going to get paid a lot, but let's suffer together for the gospel. Oh man, paint that picture of them being able to be a part of something. The statistics, specifically with millennials are willing to invest their life in something regardless of the pay, regardless of the prestige. They want to be a part of something that's bigger than themselves. And you'd be surprised how many people, when you give them the opportunity to be a part of something, you'd be surprised how many people would take advantage of that. You don't know how God's been moving in their heart as well. I'll talk about prayer a little bit later, but man, who knows? An idea in your mind that you may think, this is crazy, they're never going to be on board with it, they're never going to do anything like this. You may have one conversation and they say, yeah, I'm in. And I've been asking God to provide for me an opportunity to do something crazy for the kingdom. I'm in. One thing that I want to warn you against is don't overpromise the people that you talk to. You're gonna have the desire to have a big church and to reach a lot of people, thousands, hundreds, whatever your idea is. But you're going to be really discouraged because you've got a dream to reach thousands, and right now it's just you, or it's just you and your wife, and you're like, man, I want 1,000, but I'm trying to get 3 right now, like just 3, and we get excited, and we will say things because we want butts in seats. We just want warm bodies on our team. We just want to sell this vision to one person, and so I want to encourage you and just warn you: don't overpromise. as you're communicating this, as you're trying to impassion people, as you're trying to give people this opportunity. Don't say things like, "Hey, as soon as I have enough money, I'm going to pay you. As soon as I can do it, I'm going to bring you on staff. This is the position that I envision you leading. This is what I want you to do." You got to understand, as the leader, when you walk up to somebody and say, "This is what I envision you doing one day, student ministry," what they heard was, "I want to pay you to bring you on staff to do student ministry one day." And so again, if you've overpromised just to get them fired up and to be on your team, you're going to be in trouble if you can't deliver on those promises. They're going to leave you halfway through the planting process. So, man, stick to that need, opportunity, and vision that God has given you. Don't try to bribe them with money or power or positions, like we talked about a little bit earlier. Because you don't want all of just warm bodies on your team. Another question that was posed is, how did you decide who was a good fit for the core team? Again, it's not just warm bodies. It's not just, are you willing to go? I don't even know you, but if you're willing to go, then you can be on my team, and you can be a team leader. When it's just you, you want them to say yes, and you'll sometimes do whatever it takes. But here's what I want to remind you of, man. You've got your team is a round hole, okay, and there are a lot of square pegs out there. But you just want to put something in the hole. Like, you just want somebody on your team to fill a gap. But what you got to remember about round holes and square pegs is, when you try to mash them together, it damages both of them. So you're going to mess up your team, and you're going to mess up the person you're trying to jam in that position if it's not the right person in the right fit. And so just fight that desire. Here's an observation that I had when we were trying to get a team together. The easiest way to get people to do what you want them to do is to start with people that want the same thing that you want. The easiest way to get people to do what you want them to do is to start with people that want the same thing that you want. I was looking for people that wanted to see life change through Jesus. I was looking for people that wanted to dedicate their life to seeing other people come into a relationship with Him. I was looking for people that wanted to do that through the setting of a church plan. I was looking for people that wanted their life to matter, because those were all the same things that I wanted. And so I said, man, if I can get a team and we're all moving in the same direction, that's going to be so much easier. And so start with people that want the same thing that you want. When I looked at people, one of the things that you'll probably look at is skill. You'll see, if you need a worship leader, you'll spot a good musician, and you'll want to go talk to them, and you'll want to get that skill. Or you'll meet a guy that's really great with students, and you realize you don't have a student guy, and then you'll say, hey, that's a good student guy. I want you on my team. Here's what I looked at. I realized this. I'm looking for people with heart. You can't teach heart. You can teach skill. I can teach you how to be a good student minister. Somebody else can teach you how to play the guitar, but you can't teach heart. Do they really have a heart for lost people? Do they really have a heart for church planning and ministry? Do they have a heart for the vision that God has given you? A guy that's a great worship leader, but that doesn't have the heart for the same thing that you have, you're going to be hitting your head up against the wall the entire time he's there. Your band will sound awesome, but you'll struggle in every other area. So don't just look for skill. Look for people that have the heart. I look for people that have a calling. You guys have probably had classes before where you talked about calling, but at the end of the day, there are some days where ministry is so hard, the only thing you have left is your calling. Like, that is it. If God hadn't called me to do this, I would quit. It's just hard sometimes. And so I want to look for people, because church planning is hard. Starting anything from the ground up is hard. So I'm looking for people that are called to do this, because I know when there's no money, and when we're waking up early and staying up late, and when we're doing things that we don't want to do, I know they'll stick, because this is what God's called them to do. That's that calling in their life. So try to help them out, because eventually that's the only thing you'll be able to hang your hat on, is that calling. It'll be the only thing that will keep your team together. So as you're talking with people and casting this vision, figure out if they really got a heart to do this. Figure out if they're really called to be a part of a ministry team. If not, they're going to walk away, and you're going to be babysitting them the whole time. The 3 C's, you guys are probably familiar with this. When I look for people to be a part of a team: character, competency, and compatibility. Again, you can have the most talented guy in the world. You can have the best musicians, the best student leader, the best executive pastor, the best kids ministry person. But if their character is sketchy, then it'll end up tearing everything else down. All the work, all the trust that you've tried to build, if they've got shady character, then you'll end up losing that. They'll do something stupid, and you'll lose your influence, you'll lose your trust, you'll lose your leadership credibility. Man, don't sacrifice character for anything on your team. I don't care how great they are at what they do. I don't care how much money they have or what they're going to promise you. Don't sacrifice character. That'll come and bite you. Competency. Man, can they do what you want them to do on the team? Can they accomplish the goals together? Man, I have people, and you guys are going to have people in your churches as well. You're going to have people that they want to do certain things, but you're going to realize they're not any good at it. I don't know what it is, if it's just something they think they're good at or they want to be good at. And so just because somebody walks up to you and says, hey, I've got a heart for students, can I be a student minister? That doesn't mean they're any good at it. And so as a team leader, as people are coming in the door, you got to be able to judge, man, is this guy, where does he fit? Is he going to be able to be a part of our team based upon his competency level? And then compatibility. I'm big on unity. That's the biggest thing. Loyalty and unity on your teams is going to be a huge factor in your success and your effectiveness. If you don't get along, if they're not teachable, if they're trying to go off in a different direction, if they're constantly bristling up against the other team members, that's not a guy you want on your team. Again, I don't care how good he is. I don't care what he or she brings to the table. If they're just going to be if they're just going to splinter the team, you guys are going to spend so much time together. And if you're all trying to work in the same direction, but this guy doesn't gel with the rest of your team, it's going to be difficult. It's going to be really hard. So those are some things that I think about. The big things when I think, who can I recruit from my core team? Did you have a certain number of people in mind beforehand, or how many did you want on your team, or did you just recruit until you come? That was another question. We actually had to turn people away. We had an information meeting right before we moved to Winston-Salem, and 70 people showed up wanting to be a part of the team. And that's when I realized that's not good. Because here's the thing. When you have that many people at the infant stage, it waters down your vision. Everybody starts to try to pull you in different. Now, this is what we should do. Well, why don't we spend our money here? No, let's do this. And it's like the idea of too many chefs in the kitchen. You can't get anything done with that amount of people. And so at the beginning of the stage, man, you're trying to set culture. You're trying to set the culture of what God's called you to do. You're casting the vision. And I realized that the more people that were at the table, the harder it was to set culture. Let's start with a small group that really, 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 really get it and are really behind it. And then let's multiply like that. Let's not start with 100 people and say, all right, let me tell you how we're going to do it and what our culture is going to be and what we're going to try to accomplish. Like I said, vision starts to get watered down. It's hard to set culture with a large group of people. And so we cut it down from 70 to 28. And the way that we did that was we told everybody, if you're going to come with us, you're going to need to raise your salary for the first 3 years. And when the rubber met the road on that, everybody was like, all right, well, see ya. So that was one of the ways that we said, I want the most dedicated people on my team. And here's what it's going to be. You're going to help us raise money to get this church off the ground. And you're going to work hours of your week to help us do that. And so that's how I narrowed it down from 70 to 28 that actually moved up to us. And man, I found out later that even some of those 28 weren't even on board. And I struggled with those people. And I can't even imagine how difficult it would have been if instead of 5 people like that, I'd have had 50 people like that. And it hurt us.
You just spent your whole first year, instead of engaging the community, it would have been
babysitting my team.
Yeah.
So
good.
I wanted the people that were on board and wanted to put their money where their mouth was. What criteria, characteristics, and qualifications were you looking for in people? when recruiting for the plant. There's an old adage in church planting that says you reach who you are in church planting. Usually it's 5 years younger and 10 years older than you. And so I knew I was 26, and I knew that we would reach a lot of young families, a lot of young professionals, young adults. And so, like, one of the qualifications and criteria for people on our team was we want to have a top-notch kids ministry. That's a non-negotiable for us. So I'm looking for people that are not only young families, but that have a desire and a passion for young students and for young kids. And so, depending on who you are, depending on where you're going, depending on who your team is, your target demographic may be different than mine. And so, like for example, on our North Campus is about 15 years older. The average age is 15 years older than our downtown campus. And so youth ministry, like downtown kids ministry, is on fire. At the North Campus, everybody wants student ministry because all those kids, they're not in elementary school, they're in high school right now. And so when we form that team, we're bringing on guys like Keith that have a desire for student ministry and to reach students. And so maybe in your area or your heart or what God's called you to do, man, that's going to determine who you recruit, the characteristics that you look for. Being a 26-year-old white guy from South Carolina, I knew that I was not going to be able to move up to Maine and reach 50-year-old Hispanic men. That's just not me. And so I wanted to focus on who we were, who our team was, who we were trying to reach in the city. And when I nailed that down, I began to say, all right, so here are the characteristics of the people that I'm looking for. Here are the criteria. Here are the qualifications if you're going to be a part of our team. This is what it's going to look like. Another thing that I do is everybody has strengths and weaknesses, right? I do. I have weaknesses. When you're building a team, I wanted to choose people that were good at the things that I was bad at. I don't want to waste time on my weaknesses. I'm not interested. I know I'm weak in areas, and I'm not interested in using my time to try to build those. I would rather surround myself with people that have the strengths that I'm weak at, and then we can all just be strengths. If I spend my time working on my weaknesses, that's time that I could be spending getting better at my strengths. And so I began to ask myself, all right, Nathan, what is it that only you can do? Andy Stanley said, only do what only you can do. All right, so I'm not good at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Well, when I nailed those down, that became a criteria and a characteristic and a qualification for people that I was looking for. I can't do music. I can't do kids. I'm not a recruiter. I had a guy on our team that was a recruiter, and I recruited him because I knew if I could get him on the team, we could get like 15 other people on the team because he's a recruiter. That's just not me. I'm a macro manager. I'm not a micro manager. So I needed someone that could lead the staff on the ground well, that I could cast a vision and I could focus on the air war, the 30,000 feet, and let somebody else be focused on the ground war of what our team was doing. And so I began to identify those weaknesses. Surround yourself with people that have strengths that are your weaknesses, so your people may look different than mine. I'm not a Superman do-it-all. I don't want to be that guy. And so only do what only you can do. And then finally, we're always going to have weaknesses. I'd rather focus on my strengths than focus on my weaknesses. Let somebody else on your team step up and fulfill what your weaknesses are. They're always going to be there. So we broke it down. I broke it down into different positions that I was looking for, people that I was looking for. I was looking for elders. I was looking for pastors. I was looking for staff. And I was looking for advisors. And then I was just looking for team members. Dustin, I'll send you the information about the qualifications for some of those different positions.
Okay. That's great.
To pass on. But I was looking for elders. These are guys that are not necessarily pastors, but they're helping me lead my church. They're gonna guide and oversee. Pastors are gonna lead and direct. But here's another thing that I would encourage you on when you're building your team. You don't all of your people on your team don't have to be pastors. They don't have to be ministry people. We recruited college students that were fresh out of college that didn't have a job yet. They were looking for a job. And we said, hey, why don't you put your resume in Winston-Salem and move to Winston and be a part of this church plant. Work a secular job, but just be a part of our church. We had teachers that were getting ready to apply for jobs in South Carolina. Well, they need teachers in North Carolina. Have you ever thought about putting a resume out in North Carolina and coming and teaching in Winston-Salem and being a part of our church plant? And we had more people that out of those 28, like the majority of them, they weren't pastors or staff. They were just people that said, I'll come and be a good church member. Like, I'll give, I'll serve, I'll support you, I'll network, I'll volunteer, I'll get my friends, like where I work, to come to Revo, and I'll tell them about Jesus. And man, those people were great. Those people allowed us to see a lot of progress in our ministry when we first moved here. And a lot of those people are still with us. They don't work for the church. We don't pay them. But they invested their lives in this city to reach people that were far from God. And so don't just think that, oh, well, they're a school teacher or they majored in business. They're not going to want to be a part of a church plant. They're not going to do this. Or excuses like that. Eliminate those excuses. You never know, man. They may be willing to be a part of something, whatever God's called you to do. So that's criteria, stuff that I was looking for in various church parts of our church. And then the final question, and I'll let you guys chime in. Where did you recruit from? What networks or relationships? I recruited from everywhere. Here's what happens. God placed that vision on my heart, and I told everybody. I didn't care if you were involved in a church already. I would cast the vision to pastors of churches. I would cast the vision to deacons, to family members, to people. I didn't care how old they were either, because here's what sometimes would end up happening. You look at a person that's, let's say you're involved in a church, and you look at a person that's involved in a church, and you say, well, I don't want to steal them from another church. I don't want to take them away from what God is doing. Well, here's what you got to do, man. Just be faithful to tell people what God's called you to do and give them the opportunity to be a part of it. They can tell you no if they like where they're at. But, you know, what's interesting, I looked at guys that were serving and they were a part of a local church and a member. But after sitting down with them, they were just like, yeah, man, I'm not growing. I don't have any opportunities to serve and lead here. I'm just trying to fit in where I can, and when you give them an opportunity to take the next step, they want it. I don't know why a current church or a pastor or whatever didn't give them that opportunity, but don't just discount people, oh, well, they already go to a church, or, well, they're already serving in some capacity. I mean, those are the kind of people you want. You don't want to find the people that aren't doing anything, because they're going to come with you and not do anything. And so you don't want those people. So I would cast the vision. I cast the vision with people that I knew even wouldn't come, because here's what would happen. I was meeting with somebody that lived in South Carolina, and I found out that their son lived in Winston-Salem. And so I sat down with him and told him what God had called me to do and asked him to be a part of it. And he said he was a 60-year-old retired pharmacist. And he said, well, Nathan, obviously I'm not gonna move. Thanks for asking, but here's what I'll do. I'll call my son and tell him that you're coming and let him network and get you into some houses in that area of his friends, and I'll be a financial contributor to your ministry every month. Great. Thanks, man. That's how you can be a part of our team. You can give. And so I wouldn't discount anything. I mean, it doesn't matter. There are certain non-negotiables with theology, but just because you're not Baptist or Methodist or whatever, that doesn't mean you can't be on our team. Are you on Team Jesus? I look for people that, like, let's just be smart about it. College graduates that don't own a home, that aren't married, that don't have any kids, they're going to be a lot more likely to join your team than somebody that's settled, that has a full-time job, that has a bunch of kids and a lot of vested interest in where they're at. So, like, just be smart with who you talk to. Yeah. Just say, hey, man, they're getting ready to graduate, or they're in a transient position, or they're not married or don't have any kids, or they're renting an apartment. It's a lot easier for those people to say, hey, let me pray about that. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing anchoring me here. I'm just here working, or I'm just here in school. So, just be smart when you're thinking about those different people that you could ask. And, the 50-year-old that's 10 years away from retirement that's been working the same company his whole life is probably not your best bet when you're trying to recruit a team.
Yeah.
But others that are in a younger stage of life may well be.
We need
So-
to consider, something I've kind of thought through with our church is we have a good number of undergrads who are looking for master's or PhD studies. So what if you said, hey, you're looking to go do a PhD, you're looking to go do your master's in business or accounting? Why don't you look at, Wake Forest, where we're coming, or why don't you look at it, because they'll come, they'll get student housing, they'll be there, and then they open you up to a network of your target group. If you're looking to reach 18 to 34-year-olds, there's a good number of those college campuses. So I like how you kind of brought in the kind of think through strategically. I'm working with a church now that's looking to plant in Canada, and I'm going on a trip with them to check some things out. And one of their ways is you can't get a job once you're in Canada unless you're a citizen. So they're trying to recruit people who have online jobs, who telecommute, because they can move to Canada, work for a U.S. company, make their living, but they're up helping this church plant. And so there are people from here in Winston that they're talking to move up with whoever they want to send to plant up in Canada. And so I think there's different ways like that to think through. I think are really, really smart.
So that was kind of the crash course in it, addressing those 6 questions. You guys have any questions or any thoughts on that? Or
Derek, what do you have? I'll let you go first.
No, it was all good. I had a question. I can't remember what it was because this was back earlier in one of the questions. If I think about it, I'll ask. I can't remember.
I'll ask Derek, while you're still thinking. One of the things I need to think through, and I've talked with many planters who this story has a broad range of what I've heard. Okay, so you recruit a team of 28 people. Well, 2 years later, how many of those 28 were still with you? Because you hear the horror stories of we had 30 people, we moved to this city, and 27 of them left. When I was in Boston last year, they had a team. They had like 8 people move up. It was a couple, and another couple, and a single guy, and someone else. And they were all living in one big house. It was kind of a unique situation. And everyone but that one couple left. Everyone left. So it was this one couple who was the planter and his wife, and they're like newborn. They were the only ones left of the whole team after a year. Like within 12 months, the rest of them they couldn't handle it. It was Boston. It was a tough place. They couldn't find jobs. It's kind of crazy. They were all from Texas. They missed being home, and they left. So what was your what have you noticed with your team?
Yep, we were the same way. And a guy, listen to Dustin when he says this. A guy told me that when we first started. He said, your core team won't be there. Majority of them won't be there within the first 3 years. And I said to myself, I'm the exception. These are my friends. We're close. We know each other. We've journeyed for 15 months in preparation for that. And sure enough, probably 12 of them actually stayed out of the 28. A couple of it was for the reasons that I mentioned above, like I had to learn the hard way that they followed a person or they followed an idea of ministry. And we had one of our key leaders that left after the first year, and a bunch of people that he recruited realized, no, I came here for us, and he's gone, and so now I'm going to go. But I'm okay with that, and I'll tell you why. I really do believe that God will bring people to your team to help you get something off the ground, and He may have never intended them to be there for the long haul, but you needed somebody in the first year to help you make a presence, to help you lay down your roots, and those people were there for you, and God sent them there. I'm thankful for all, even though those guys left, I'm thankful for all 28 of them that they made the commitment to come, because we're still reaping benefits from their connections and the work that they did even 4 years later with that. So,
what about, I know some, especially some who kind of write books on church planting, we're talking about the difference between your core team and a launch team. So maybe the launch team, you have your core team who move up here, but then as you're building relationships and stuff, your launch team becomes a little bigger. Just take a minute or two to kind of explain how that looked differently. So because I know you guys were here for a while before you launched. Mm-hmm. So what does that look like as you had your core team, but they were actually helping build this next team? Explain that a little bit.
Yeah, we had to actually transition. Core team is very insider language. Launch team is outwardly focused. And so when we got into town, we had to slowly transition from I'm building a team to now we're reaching a city. And a core team, like when you hear, oh, I'm a part of the core team, well, what that communicates to you is you're not. And I'm on the inside and you're not. Mm. And so when we became outwardly focused after we got here, after the 15 months of team building, like we told the team, we're not calling the core team anymore. You're not the core team, you're the launch team. We're pushing towards the launch of our church now. And so even that language tried to help really guide the culture, and what we did is now we're outwardly focused. It's not core anymore. It's not me meeting in my house with you guys anymore. It's us recruiting other people to be a part of this launch service, this church that we're doing. So yeah, it was definitely a change in mindset, and changing your language and your culture and who you spend your time with. And we had some guys that left because there was a lack of intimacy. They wanted a connection with the lead guy, and they wanted a lot of time with the lead guys. But when we started to get focused on the outer people, and they couldn't spend a lot of time with me, hanging out with me, they were like, I don't know if I want to do this or not. So,
So, Derek, you think of your questions?
Well, you kind of asked it with the amount of people who left after the launch or after you just moving up here. But if you could go back and do something different about choosing, what would that be?
I would have the biggest mistake I made was I didn't clarify roles for people. What I communicated, I didn't even know that I was communicating it, but it was over-promising things to them. It was setting unrealistic expectations because the passion was burning so hot inside me. They were looking at me like, gosh, man, if that's what God's going to do, this thing is going to be crazy. Yeah. And when it doesn't go from 0 to 1,000 in the first 2 months, everybody's like, whoa, I thought this didn't sound like what you said. I thought this was going to look different. And so I wish I'd have just said, hey, let's clarify the roles. Let's make sure that we're all moving in this direction, that these are the expectations that we have for one another. Because I think when expectations don't go met, then people start questioning roles. They'll question their role. They'll question your role. Why isn't it growing faster? Maybe you shouldn't be the lead pastor. Maybe you don't have what it takes. Maybe I should be the lead pastor. What do you guys think about that? And it starts to snowball.
You get a coup going, and then you get your first church split. You haven't even planned it yet.
Yeah, right.
Here's a really good question as we close out from Josh online. He says, if you are planning on reaching a specific subculture or a city you're planting has a dominant subculture, does that affect your selection in the core team? Like if you were kind of reaching a specific niche of people, so to speak, does that affect how you...
Yeah, I'll give you one example. Moravian culture is huge here in Winston. When we got here and began to get our launch team together, I looked for people that grew up in the Moravian culture because I wanted to know, how can I relate to them? What exactly do you believe? Not like what's written on paper, but what do you believe? What are the traditions? What do I need to know? And so, like, even Moravian culture in this city is huge. Mm-hmm. And so you got a guy that we had some women on our team that were former Moravians. They grew up in the church, and then when they turned 18, they were like, I don't go to church anymore. And so, but they were able to walk through, hey, this is a big deal. This is what they believe. This is how you're going to reach Moravians.
I think that's really key because, for me personally, it's one of these, like, we know there's a Moravian presence. I mean, everyone does a love feast and all this kind of stuff happening, and even other churches will join the Moravian church to do this kind of stuff. But being Baptist, I'm like, I have no clue what that starts for. Mm-hmm. Like, I've never, my hometown, there's not a single Moravian church where I grew up. Come here, every other corner has a Moravian church, and so I think that's really good insight.
But what was the name?
This is Josh.
Josh, one of my buddies is a missionary in Malaysia, and he wants to reach the Malay people. And the very first thing that he did was he tried to lead one person to Christ, a Malay person, because he knew, like, white kid from America is not going to be able to do this without somebody like a person of peace. And he couldn't find anybody, so he spent his time. His team building, I guess, was leading that first guy to Christ. And because of that, now he's got an inroad. Now he's learning their culture and knows what's up and is making some great progress. So, yeah, if you got a demographic like that, I would target that. If you can't find a believer, then go make one.
There you go. There you go. Well, awesome. Well, Nathan, thank you so much for today. This has been excellent, and it's going to be a benefit to our students. So thanks for your time and your wisdom, and you'll be back a few more times the rest of this year. So we look forward to that as well. So
Yep.
I'm going to end this.